Everyone. Hi. Welcome to those who are joining us online and offline. My name is Anastasia Stokalova. I'm the founder of private nonprofit institution of continuing education English language school called Speak English. Yay, I'm also one of the teachers here. And I will be somewhat hosting this event tonight. Before our guest, the well-recognized in the US family law attorney and also famous for farm and agriculture law attorney, Cari Rincker, will be joining us tonight at 8 p.m. But before, I'd like to check how much you guys know about family law, the vocabulary that she will be using in her presentation. Hi. Hi, we have more people joining us. What's your name?
My name is
Igor. Good. I don't think I see you in here. Did you register to be with us online or offline?
Offline.
Offline, good. What's your last name?
Slivka. Igor Slivka.
Okay. I guess I need to update the list. Okay. Anyhow, Igor, what's your connection to law? Are you a lawyer yourself or what's the plan here? Oh, no connection. Okay, that's fine. That's totally cool. That's why I prepared the presentation for you guys to go over some necessary vocabulary. Good. Okay. So let's start with the first slide. Those who are joining us on Zoom, can you guys send some messages so we could see that you guys seeing and hearing the same thing people in the audience can hear and see? Okay. So we should be good to go. Some words to remember before we begin. Annulment. When you see the word for the first time, I know that we have some lawyers in the audience and online. Can you guys tell me what does this word mean? When you first look at the word, what do you see? For me, I saw the word null. Null means null, zero. If you go to the dictionary, it will probably give you the following definition: the act of annulling something, which doesn't make much sense. So we need to look at the form, to look on a different form. So verb, the verb to annul means to state officially that something such as agreement or marriage is no longer exists. So annul means to аннулировать, прекращать что-то. And those who are good enough, whose English is good enough, can you guys translate the following sentence? Его второй брак был аннулирован, потому что он так и не развелся со своей первой женой. А те, кто сейчас присутствует в Zoom, ребята, мы видим ваши ответы, можете нам писать в чат. Я дам вам немножко времени подумать. Okay. So far, I'm going to answer someone from offline here. Anastasia, can you help us out? Hold on.
His second marriage was annulled because he hasn't divorced with his first wife.
That's good. And the correct answer is yes. So his second marriage was annulled, the past tense here, because he never divorced his first wife. Аннулирование, расторжение или отмена, annulment. Okay, good. Next one. Separation. Separation, another legal term Karri will be using in her presentation. Separation. If you look again at the definition of the word, when two married people stop living together as a couple, разъединение, временное прекращение сожительства. It is different from divorce, right? how this is different, I guess it's a good question to ask Cari in her presentation, if you guys wondering what kind of questions you can ask a lawyer. So this is one of the questions. So what is the difference between divorce and separation? And the next term is also well known, divorce, the legal ending of marriage. So when we talk about separation, legally nothing was done. But when we talk about divorce, it's where there is a legal end of a marriage. Okay, another question, task for you guys to warm up your brains. Их брак закончился разводом. И здесь есть одна очень интересная деталь. I have teachers in the audience, and here's a good question, how to, oh, we have more people joining us. Hold on, while you guys thinking how to translate this one. Hi, hello. That's okay. Sit, yeah, I know who you are, Valeria and Vasily. Yes, good to see you guys. Sit somewhere not too close, not too far. So I'm going back to where we started. We're going over some words that you will need to know in order to understand what is happening, okay? And now we're trying to translate the following sentence. Их брак закончился разводом. Do we see people answering in the chat? Anyone? Oh, I see Елена Дегтяренко is joining us, so she should be able to translate this one. Okay, so the marriage ended in divorce. Did you guys know that the preposition that you use here is in? Yeah, that was news actually for me as well. So their marriage ended in divorce, в разводе. Good. Next one. Oh, possible way to form a question. Can we please go back to the previous slide? So if you're wondering what you can ask Cari about, that could be, what is the difference between annulment, separation, and divorce? As far as I know, annulment is very similar to divorce, but when the legal action is called annulment, the marriage is this as if completely disappears, as if it never existed. So annulment, обнулять, аннулировать. Divorce, разводиться, separation, временно разойтись, не жить вместе, but that's not the divorce. But again, this is something you could ask an actual attorney. That's why I like this kind of events, because not only those who are interested in law could enlarge their vocabulary, but also learn something new. I mean, it happened to me today as well. Good. So next term, I know for sure that these are what Cari is going to use during her speech, because I saw the presentation in advance. So you guys better remember. Custody. Not one of my favorite words, but it does exist. So custody. Для тех, кто видит слово в первый раз, заходит в словарь, пытается найти определение. Ключевые слова. Смотрим, да? Legal right to keep or to take care of someone. Custody. Опекунство. Кто получит опекунство над детьми? Again, same task. Try to translate the sentence. Кто получит опекунство над детьми? Any answers from people online? Yes, no? Not yet. Okay, maybe someone from the audience. Daria, can you help us out? Oh, I see. Who will get the custody over children? Hey, guys. Okay. So, Daria?
I think we can say who will be awarded, custody.
Good. This, who will have custody of the children? Who will have custody of the children? Another interesting fact I've noticed, guys. Смотрите. Какое слово мы используем для того, чтобы ознаменовать, что опекунство было передано? Это очень символично и очень интересно, что divorce court awarded. Award to award means награждать, наградила. То есть это награда быть способным заботиться и ухаживать за детьми. So, обратите внимание на предложение «The divorce court awarded custody to the child's mother». То есть мама ребенка была награждена правом заботиться о своем ребенке. Это, на мой взгляд, очень хороший пример. Okay. Next one, child support. Also connected to the word custody in some way, but to a different parent. So child support, money that parents must pay regularly to help support their children. Мы знаем это слово как слово «алименты». И также очень интересный момент, как можно сказать по-другому child support, и то, что используется в легальных терминах, это maintenance money. To maintain something. To maintain — поддерживать, держать что-то на плаву. Maintenance money — деньги, которые помогают второму родителю содержать ребенка. So, алименты, child support also can be called maintenance money. Okay. Next one. Oh, this is one of my favorite. It's not very common in Russia. I don't think that many people know about this legal term. So it's called prenuptial agreement. Prenuptial agreement. Also, well, I knew this word as a non-informal way of saying prenup. I think Cari will be using nuptial agreement in her presentation. And if you look at the keywords, before, money, if divorced. I guess in Russian tradition, it's bad luck to think of something in advance, like, oh, if we get divorced, who will get the money? Usually Russian people are broke like before they get married, because we get married also quite early, but I'm not here to talk about this. So prenuptial agreement made by a couple before they get married to say how their money and property will be divided if they get divorced. Здесь у нас задание наоборот, да? Переводим с английского на русский. He asked her to sign a prenuptial agreement when they got engaged. Okay. Okay. So, those guys who joining us online and offline? Okay. Good, good, good. Anyone from the audience? Ivan? No? Anastasia.
Он попросил ее подписать брачный договор, когда они поженятся.
Ага, окей. Смотрите, что интересно. Он попросил подписать брачный договор. Перед помолвкой, да. В русском языке мы не часто используем слово «помолвка». We are not engaged. У нас обычно сразу поженились, либо там он и сделал мне предложение. В английском очень часто, постоянно, всегда люди могут находиться в состоянии engaged, поэтому обычно prenup agreement подписывается непосредственно, когда люди находятся в состоянии помолвленности. Okay? Ну, наша версия перевода следующая. Он попросил ее подписать брачное соглашение, когда они помолвились. Okay, sounds good. And next term that also will be used in Cari's presentation is cohabitation agreement. It's a legal agreement reached between a couple to have chosen to live together. In Russian we know it as гражданский брак или сожительство. But same again, this also could be done legally. Here in Russia, we don't really do this, but in the United States, that's a very common practice. And I guess Cari will give us more information about what it means. Okay. Next one. So here we'll see 3 words that have one suffix in common. That's one of the ways you guys can memorize new words. So the suffix shin helps to form abstract nouns from verbs. Да? То есть он помогает нам сформировать существительное из глагола при помощи, то есть вы можете знать, что все те слова, которые заканчиваются на ция, тия, это у нас будут существительные, да? В данном случае у нас есть 3 термина: litigation, mediation and negotiation. Я предполагаю, что Кари будет рассказывать о своей деятельности, как она помогает своим клиентам, и это 3 распространенных, скажем так, операции, которые она, как адвокат, делает, выполняет со своими клиентами. Litigation, давайте посмотрим. The process of making or defending a claim in court. Что у нас здесь за ключевые слова? To make or defend. Claim in court. Claim — это исковое заявление, court, соответственно, суд. То есть я так предполагаю, что Кари помогает представлять ваши интересы в суде. Неважно, кем вы являетесь, вы можете быть как истцом, так и стороной, которая защищает себя. To defend — защищает себя от нападок со стороны. Дальше, my favorite, mediation. To mediate. Basically, you end the disagreement before the court even started. So mediation, ending a disagreement between people by talking to them and trying to find things that everyone can agree on. Мы используем его в значении содействия в спорных ситуациях. And last but not least, negotiation. Многие могут знать это слово из General English, да, negotiation — это переговоры, умение вести переговоры, также может использоваться в английском языке как отдельный вид деятельности. So basically when two parties meet before the court and everything which is said and done can be used in court in order to win the lawsuit. That's my idea of what the law idea of the word negotiation. So the process of formal discussion between people who are trying to reach an agreement. Ведение переговоров also can be done with the help of a lawyer. But again, you guys, if you thinking what you can ask Cari about, that's one of the ideas to break down the difference between litigation, mediation, and negotiation. Okay, and last but not least, but very important. So here we have, if you guys could look at images, you might even guess the meaning of those words. So the word asset, when you write your resume, you can say, I will be a great asset to the company. Asset, something valuable, a person or thing, and especially property that is valuable and useful for someone. So asset can be a thing, a property, or even a person, okay? Estate. Estate, hello to more people joining us here. Hello, Helen. Okay, estate, all the money and property that the person owns. And the last one is real estate. That's usually when we talk about property. Property, land, or buildings that you guys have. So let's mix it up. We have актив. Это у нас что такое? Asset, yes. Недвижимость — это real estate or estate? Посмотрите внимательно определение. Недвижимость — это real estate, yes, so property, то, что не двигается. Ага. And the last one is имущество. Good. So имущество — то, чем вы владеете. Money and property. Okay? And now, is it the time? Yes, I think it's about time, if Cari is ready, to welcome the U.S. nationally recognized food, farm, and family law attorney, Cari Rincker, who is joining us. Just a second. It's 5 a.m. in Illinois, and we are really grateful for Cari to find some time to talk to people online and offline. Hello, let's see. Cari, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you. And it's been great listening to your presentation about some of the English words that I'm going to be talking about here today. So thank you for that.
Okay, Cari, can you see us? Can you see the, so we will be, good. So we have your presentation here and we will be changing the slides here for you. Is that okay? Or do you prefer to do it yourself?
Oh, no, it's fine. Absolutely. Would you like for me to stop sharing my screen?
let's ask the guys, those who joining us via Zoom, can you guys see the presentation? That because we have two different modes here, the offline mode, as you can see here, we have some people with us, and the majority of audience is joining us online. So I want to ask those who are online, will you guys be able to see the presentation?
Hi, this is Erin Concourse here from the consulate, and we can see it just great, the presentation.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you. So which one do we want Cari to share her screen? Okay, Cari, I think let's share your screen so we will see the presentation and you at the same time.
Okay, no problem. I will do that. All right, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about being a family lawyer. In some states, we call this a matrimonial lawyer, but family law is a little bit more of a broader term to discuss what I do. So I have my own law practice. Some lawyers work for other attorneys. I'm the owner of my own law practice, which is called Rincker Law. We have offices both in New York City and also in Illinois, which is where I am from. And right now, I'm actually speaking today from New York City. So I'm in New York right now. So
okay, what time is it in New York?
It is 6 a.m. in New York.
It's 6 a.m. Okay, well, it's better than 5 a.m.
So what is family law? So family law is a hybrid of a lot of different kinds of law, okay? But it's primarily dealing with two things, which is marriage or people that are unmarried and they have kids, okay? So let's start with the marital issues, okay, or matrimonial law. And that would include things dealing with divorce, okay, when people decide that they want to end their marriage, separation, maybe that they want to get legally separated, okay? And I would advise for my clients to have a legal separation as opposed to a divorce in one of two circumstances. One being that there is a chance, albeit small, that they might reconcile. So perhaps they want to continue to be legally married while they work on their marriage in some way, shape, or form. The second reason might be because of a legal reason, perhaps immigration, perhaps health insurance, something along those lines. Number three, annulment. So an annulment is different than a divorce or a separation because it's like the marriage did not happen at all. It is very hard to get an annulment. So an example would be if, let's just say somebody got married, okay, and they did not know that their spouse was already married to somebody else, okay? So in the United States, you cannot be legally married to more than one person at the same time, okay? And if that happens, then that is a reason why the marriage could then be annulled, okay? So it's like it never happened. And then dealing with money issues during the marriage. So a lot of people think that, you know, if a spouse cuts off another spouse with money, you know, during the marriage, that they have to file a divorce in order to get spousal support, money. But that's not actually true, at least in the states that I practice. You can go to court and ask for spousal support even during the marriage, okay? Even while the two people are living together. So that's big issue number one, is dealing with marriage. Big issue number two is dealing with kids, okay? And of course, people that are married could have kids, but people that are unmarried could also have kids. So this is dealing with both divorce and people that are unmarried, all right? So I know that you guys already discussed the term custody, and I know that your instructor said that she did not like that word. And to be honest with you, in the United States, a lot of courts also don't like that word. So what custody means is the person who has control, okay? And so in most states, there are two types of custody. One is residential custody, which is where the children live primarily. And the second is legal custody, which is decision making. In some states that I practice, like Illinois, the courts no longer even use the word custody. Instead, they use the word allocation of parental responsibilities, which is basically a longer way to say the word custody, okay? And so to go back to those two types of custody, a parent with the primary residence of the children would then have the residential custody, and the parent who's making decision making would have legal custody. Now, if the parents make decisions together, then that is considered joint legal custody or joint allocation of parental responsibilities, okay? So the next stage in this determination has to do with parenting time. And there can be a lot of negotiation around this area of parenting time. I typically separate my agreements into 4 different areas. The first is the basic schedule whenever school is in session and things are normal, okay? So I don't know what things are like there in Russia right now, but in the United States this spring, things have not been normal because of the pandemic. Kids have been in school online, okay? But in a normal situation, whenever kids are going to school each day, Monday through Friday, what does the parenting schedule look like? Okay, so that's big issue number 1. Big issue number 2 has to do with school breaks. So in the United States, we have a few school breaks that we always have. And depending on the school, there might be additional breaks. For example, we have a holiday in November called Thanksgiving, and there's about 4 to 5 days off from school during this period of time. In December and January, there's about 2-week break from school for Christmas and for the winter holidays. And then around Easter time in the spring, we have a spring break, all right? That's usually in March or April. So one of the issues that's discussed between these parents that are separated is how to determine who gets the children during those school breaks. Summer would be the third issue that would need to be discussed because the kids are not in school and perhaps they go to summer camp or perhaps they are traveling and going on vacation. And then the final issue with parenting time has to do with holidays. So perhaps the parents want to make a plan for who has the children on various holidays throughout the year, or perhaps even birthdays and things like that. Now, child support is, in a sense, unrelated to custody and parenting time, but it is also a little intertwined. So child support in most states in the United States is a mathematical equation, and it is based on the income of the parents, how many children the parties have, whether or not they have children with other people, okay, and whether or not that child has any special circumstances. You know, for example, perhaps the child has special medical needs and needs more support. So it is a mathematical equation with a lot of variables. In states like Illinois, which is somewhat controversial, but child support is also based on the number of overnights a parent might have. So if a parent has equal 50-50 time, then the parent who makes more money will actually pay less money in support because they have the children with them more of the year. Okay, so that's big issue number 2, is dealing with kids. Big issue number 3 is dealing with specialized agreements. The first one is like a prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement, okay? And the word nuptial just means marriage. So it's basically a marital agreement, okay? About 99% of the time, these come into place before the marriage, okay? So this is a prenuptial agreement, where I know your instructor said the word prenup. I call them prenups. And I do a lot of these, especially in New York, okay? It's very culturally accepted in New York City for people to have prenuptial agreements. It is rare for people to sign these after they are married. Why? Well, you know, at that point, they're already married. So, you know, oftentimes in a prenuptial agreement, people are giving up rights. And if you are already married, then there's no need for you to give up any of your rights. For example, sometimes, but not always, people will negotiate spousal support, money, okay? But if you are already married, then why would you want to make that promise or waiver? That being said, there are circumstances where people would want to go ahead and sign a postnuptial arrangement after the marriage. Perhaps one person had a large inheritance and they want to have some kind of an agreement about that money being used for marital purposes. Another form of a specialized agreement would be a cohabitation agreement. So this could deal with things like how couples are going to spend their money together, or perhaps it could even discuss things like dogs and cats, animals. You might be surprised to hear this, but I actually had a 4-day trial once over a dog between an ex-boyfriend and ex-girlfriend who both wanted the dog. So there are things like that, furniture in the house, the payment of bills, etc., that could be discussed in the cohabitation agreement. The fourth major area of family law that I also do is in the area of domestic violence. So with the pandemic, there has been an uptick in domestic violence. I have been doing more orders of protection in the last few months than what I normally do. And so this is not just simply when somebody punches somebody in the face, okay? This could also be things like money abuse. It could be emotional abuse, name calling, it could be stalking, harassment, even cyberbullying. If somebody is angry at an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend for breaking up with them, it could be all of those things, okay? So a lot of the domestic violence issues that I have had in the last few months have been mostly with people who are living together and perhaps, we're kind of tired of being around each other for so long, and it ensued into some domestic violence. The last area that I do the least, but I do some, is with adoptions and guardianships. So I myself am not an attorney who files for adoptions, but what I do is I work as a guardian ad litem, which is basically somebody who is the eyes and the ears of the court for adoption hearings, for the court to understand on whether or not that they should approve or disapprove an adoption. I also do guardianships. In fact, since I've been here in New York for the first time ever, I had a guardianship hearing via Zoom using this exact platform that we did just now with this presentation. I did with a courtroom on a guardianship proceeding. So that is the broad base on what exactly family law is. So who am I? So I am a food, farm, and family lawyer. So about 75% of what I do is family law. Okay, so this is really my bread and butter. And I do family law on a few different sides of things. I'm in the courtroom a lot. Okay, there are lawyers that are in the courtroom more than me, but I am in the courtroom a lot. I also am a mediator. And what a mediator is a neutral third party who sits back and helps the parties hopefully reach an amicable resolution. With this pandemic, there has been an uptick in what is called online mediation. I took a training for online mediation in May. And so there has been a lot more mediation that has been happening via video conference, such as with Zoom. And so I'm really excited to see what will happen in the area of family law whenever we're able to add more video conference technology to mediation. Like I said before, I have offices both in New York City and in Illinois. I have 3 offices total, one here in New York, one in Champaign, Illinois, which is where the University of Illinois is located, and then Shelbyville, which is where I grew up. It's a very small town of only about 5,000 people. And it's been fun for me in practicing law where I grew up. I also teach mediation at the University of Illinois. It has been questionable on whether or not universities in the United States will be having online or in-person classes. It looks like right now, at least, that I'll be teaching this mediation class online via Zoom, which is what we're using right now. There's a photograph of a book on this slide. I actually was the editor of the book. I did not write the whole book, but what I ended up doing is I got a bunch of colleagues together, and all of my colleagues wrote different chapters of the book. I wrote some of the chapters of the book, but I was the person who edited the entire book to put it together. And it talks about a myriad of New York divorce and family law issues. I hope to write the Illinois part of this book as well. So how did I become a family lawyer? You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not go to law school to become a family lawyer. I actually went to law school to become a food and agriculture attorney. I grew up on a farm, and, you know, I am not a child of divorce at all. And I went to Pace University School of Law. It's right north of New York City. And I received certificates in environmental law and international law. And in fact, in law school, I didn't even take family law. In hindsight, I wish I would have, and I think I would have really enjoyed that class. And perhaps the lesson for me in looking backwards is to not be so focused on your goals and believing that this is where I want to go, and to be more open to what life brings you, and to be more open to taking other types of classes. I worked as an agricultural lawyer for 1 year out in Wyoming, and then I decided to basically move back to New York City and start my own law practice. Okay, so when I started my own law practice, I had never taken a law school class on family law, and I didn't know anything about family law. It took me about 1.5 years for me to get my law practice off the ground in New York City. Okay, so one of the big pieces of advice that I have for people wanting to start their own business is they need to have a plan for money. Okay, so that plan for money could be a lot of different things. It could be that you've saved a bunch of money. It could be that you are going to have financial help from family, perhaps, or other people, or a spouse. Or it could be that you are going to work on the side. And that is what I decided to do. I decided that I was going to start my practice, start my business, and I was going to also work for other law firms. And what I decided to do was practice what's called door law, which means I took cases that came through the door. And eventually, a divorce came through the door. I didn't know what to do. So what I ended up doing is I found a good mentor, a mentor that I knew that practiced family and matrimonial law. And I called her up on the phone. And I offered to pay her for her time. And I said, hey, I have a divorce. I need help. I need you to show me what to do. And she handheld me through that divorce, which was a great learning experience for me. And then I got another divorce, and she also helped me with that divorce. And over time, I began to not only learn family law, but I developed a real love for it as well. There is a saying with lawyers that you don't find your law practice finds you. And that is really my story on how I became a family lawyer. A lot of people become a family lawyer because they are a child of divorce, or they have some kind of a story like that, like perhaps they got divorced themselves. But I don't have that story. My parents are still married. And in fact, on my father's side of the family, almost everyone is still married. But I come from a different place on why I decided and why I felt attracted to become a family lawyer. You know, ultimately for me, I went to law school because I wanted to help people. I went to law school at the time because I wanted to help farmers and ranchers in agriculture. And so I didn't really know what it was going to look like on the other side of things. But, you know, at the end of the day, I believe that I am a compassionate person, and I really, truly like to help people through tough challenges in their life. And I think that divorce and separation is one of those tough challenges. I'm very passionate in the fact that when people have children, that they need to do whatever they can to try to work things out amicably and keep things friendly between them for the sake of the children. And now that I have moved home, I live primarily in Illinois. I also do farm and ranch divorces. So that has been a nice combination of both agriculture law and also family law. So what are the skills that are used as a family lawyer? And I use all of these different skills depending on the day, some more than others. So one skill that I'm constantly using is negotiation, okay? So sometimes negotiation is on the phone. I'm going back and forth with another lawyer on the phone, and we're negotiating a divorce. And another form of negotiation might be with emails. Perhaps the lawyers are going back and forth, and we're negotiating terms of an agreement over email. Or perhaps more formally, we'll go back and forth with letters. Another form of negotiation can take place in person. Sometimes this is referred to as a four-way settlement conference where both lawyers and clients are in the same room, right? 2 lawyers, 2 clients, 4 people. Another skill that I use a lot as a family lawyer are my mediation skills. So of course I can be a mediator myself, but even if I am trying to negotiate a case or I'm working with my client, I'm still using a lot of those same skills with mediation. I'm trying to see things through the eyes of the other person in hopes of reaching an agreement. So, but of course, as a mediator myself, I use those skills. Third, I use litigation skills. Family law oftentimes is courtroom litigation, okay? And the court system helps move these disputes along. I have a trial that's coming up next month. That particular trial is on a domestic violence issue, okay? The trial started before I came to New York for one day, and the trial will continue in a few weeks on a second day. I also have trials that involve divorce. And when I say trials, I mean a person gets on the stand, there's questions that are asked, there's cross-examination, there's exhibits, there's all of those things that you might see on television that will take place in family law cases. The fourth skill, which I feel that I use almost all the time, is counseling. So sometimes lawyers are referred to, there's three words for lawyers. There's lawyer, there's attorney, and then there's also counselor, right? So sometimes I go to court and somebody at the court will say counselor, okay? And it's interesting that that is one of the words for lawyers in the United States because this is primarily what lawyers are doing, is that we're trying to give our clients guidance. We're trying to help them through their chapter in their life, different than what a therapist would do with counseling, right? But we are trying to give them advice. Some of that advice is legal advice, and some of it is just practical advice. For example, perhaps I have a female client who has not been working. She has been out of the workforce for 10 years because she was raising kids. And her husband has left her, okay? And, you know, she's going to probably get some spousal support, but ultimately she needs to get a new job. She needs to get a job in her life. And perhaps myself as an attorney am not giving her legal advice, but perhaps I'm giving her advice on how to transition to the next chapter of her life. So that would all come into the fourth thing, which is counseling. And then finally, I do a lot of contract drafting and reviewing. So those are the 5 things that I do a lot as a family lawyer. So what I like and what is also challenging about family law is that it interacts with so many other types of law. You know, for example, sometimes there's provisions about estate planning, right? So this could come into play not only in situations where people are getting a divorce, but also with prenuptial agreements. There's interplay with bankruptcy law. I have a divorce right now where the husband has now filed for bankruptcy in the middle of the divorce. And so what does that mean for my client who is the wife in this situation? It has to do with real estate law. People who are married or people that are cohabitating together might be buying property or selling property before or after their relationship ends. It has to do with Medicare and Medicaid planning, right? Health insurance issues, definitely retirement and pension issues. We already talked about child support, you know, spousal support, which is sometimes referred to as spousal maintenance or alimony in the United States. Alimony is a less used word now for spousal support. Okay, so that comes into play. Life insurance. We already talked about custody and parenting time, but even international law, like the Hague Convention, okay? The Hague Convention is an international treaty where countries who are signatories to the Hague Convention have all agreed that they are going to uphold the terms of each other's custody agreement. So if somebody has a custody award in one country, then another country is going to uphold it. And I'm sorry, I don't know if Russia is a signatory of the Hague Convention or not. And the last thing would have to do with equitable distribution of assets in a divorce. There's a lot of challenges as a family lawyer. A lot of people don't like to do family law because of these challenges. So there is a saying that criminal lawyers see bad people at their best behavior, and family lawyers see good people at their worst. You know, like I said before, my parents never got divorced. I have never been married, and I have never been divorced. I have had romantic relationships break up, and I know that it could be very heartbreaking for one person to do that, and then to experience that kind of a breakup, much less to experience that kind of breakup when there are children that are involved, or there's assets, perhaps the two people are doing business together, you know. So this could be a very stressful and emotional time for people, and they're calling me for help, okay? And you know, some lawyers get to practice what's called happy law, which means that they are always working with people when life is good and life is great, right? And to some extent, prenuptial agreements is an example of that, where I'm able to help people with a prenuptial agreement before they get married. But usually people are calling me because things are not so good, and they're getting a divorce or a separation, or they're fighting over their kids, or there's been domestic violence. So there is a lot of stress that comes with being a family lawyer. With that being said, I feel that there is no area of the law where I'm able to help people more than with family law. And then I also have to deal with emergencies a lot, or what clients perceive as being emergencies that aren't actually emergencies. So this is really what my life is like on a typical basis. And so what do? I have to figure out ways to manage that stress, not only for myself, but all family lawyers have to do this. We have to pay attention to our own wellness, including our own mental and physical health. You know, something that I have done just very recently with the help of the pandemic, actually, is I've decided to go back to therapy myself. I'm a really big fan of therapy, psychotherapy. I refer almost all my clients to psychotherapists. I believe if you are going through a divorce or a separation, you should not be afraid to seek counseling. And with the pandemic in the United States, people have been able to have therapy sessions via Zoom. And so I've been able to find a therapist that I've been able to video conference with. And that's one of the things that I do for my own wellness. We've talked about things that have to do with stress management in those sessions, you know, meditation, for example, journaling, me not checking my email all the time. So those are some of the things that we've talked about in my own therapy sessions. And so when you're helping other people, you have to take care of yourself first before you can then help other people. And that's something that as a family lawyer, I really have to keep that in mind. And also, you know, I juggle a lot of cases. I have a lot of clients that are needing help from me, okay? But I also have to remember that for them, they have one case. They have their own case, and they think about it all the time. They're very anxious about their own case. And so because of that, I really have to manage client expectations and practice client control from the very beginning. This is my contact information. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter. I'm even on Snapchat. I have a YouTube channel. So I would really encourage you guys to reach out to me and connect with me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and looking forward to connecting.
Okay, Cari, thank you so much for doing this for us. And now, if you have time, we have questions in the audience, right? Well, I'm personally myself. Can you see us? Can you guys show? Yeah. That's how many people we have here, and even more people, I guess, we have online. Let's do one by one. One question from the chat and one question from the audience. Are there any questions in the chat? Yes, no? Can you guys? No, okay. So I guess I'll start. I was really surprised by how vast the definition of domestic violence is. So, okay. How can you actually prove? Is it possible to prove? Well, I understand the cyber thing, but how do you prove that someone been calling names and actually go to court with the accusation? Is it even possible? Do you deal with cases like that a lot? I know that you said that you've been dealing with the couple who trying to get the custody of a dog, which was also kind of surprising. And but is it possible to prove such act of domestic violence as emotional pressure or name calling?
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that?
Because people text it, right?
Right.
And so listen, I mean, I think that, you know, if a person is testifying, and I'm so sorry, I just got a phone call.
Okay, guys, we have time to think about questions, right? Anyone? Get ready. I will give the mic. Okay, so one, let's prepare the questions. Christian, I'm expecting for you to ask something. Yes. Uh-huh. Anastasia. Okay, Cari is back.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
So whenever there are two people that are romantically involved, or perhaps they're no longer romantically involved, but they were at some point, okay? So if there is somebody who is using emotional abuse, perhaps they're calling them bad names, okay? If that person will go to court and testify that this person has called me these names, this is the effect that it has had in my life, the judge will be able to take that oral testimony and decide whether or not that person was credible, okay? So what credibility means is this person believable, okay? Now, it is possible that the other side will be able to show that the person testifying is a liar, okay? That they have reason to lie, but ultimately, all that they have to be able to prove is that it is more likely than not that this person said these things. I'm here to tell you that usually if there is emotional abuse in a relationship, then people tend to text message that negativity in one way, shape, or form. So clients oftentimes are sending me text message histories between the two of them, and I'm able to use those text messages as exhibits in trial.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the chat? Can you guys tell me? No questions. Okay, guys, the audience then.
Okay, the first I'd like to say thank you for the lecture, and I have a question about the differences between how people treat marriage and having children in Russia and the United States. So in Russia, in early 19th or 80s, people try to get married in their early 20s, and after that to have children as soon as possible. But for today's day, this situation have changed, and people try to get the better career, and not hurry, they don't hurry up to get married. So how the situation is different between Russia and the United States about it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think in the United States, it varies a lot from geographic region to geographic region. You know, for example, I'm sitting here right now in New York City. I'm in a hotel room, and that's why my phone just rang. I apologize about that. But here in New York, people tend to get married later on in their life. And in fact, it's not uncommon for women to have children in their late 30s or early 40s, or perhaps just get married in the 30s. Whereas there are other parts of the United States where culturally people get married much younger in life, perhaps in college or right out of college, and they're starting their families in a younger part of their life. There's no right or wrong, you know, answer to that, but I understand that a lot of it has to do with culture, you know, in a particular geographic region. And I'm also curious, just because I don't know enough about Russia culture in this regard, if it would be the same. Like, I wonder if people in more metropolitan areas in Russia would tend to get married later on in life, and in more rural communities that it's earlier in life. I don't know the answer to that question, but that is the trend in the United States.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Okay, there is the question in the chat. Cari, can you see that? Okay, I will read it. How much time do you spend with your students, and do they have any real cases?
So I teach mediation at the University of Illinois, and in my class is once a week for 3 hours a week. And I do spend a lot of time preparing for class, you know, before my lectures. One of the things that I did with my mediation class, which was extraordinarily helpful, is I made everybody do a mock mediation where they did a practice mediation and everybody role played. And I actually video recorded that presentation and played it back for them, okay? And I reviewed that mediation with them. And this is a great piece of advice, because throughout my life, I've had opportunities where I've been video recorded and watched that video recording back. And sometimes I like to cringe a little bit when I see myself on video, but it could be a helpful learning experience. So in that particular mediation class, they did not mediate any real cases. They mediated mock cases, but we tried to simulate it where it felt more real to them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there you go.
Cari, hello, and thank you once again for waking up so early to have this meeting with us. The question I've got is about if it's possible, for example, not to have a lawyer when you get a divorce. I mean, is it possible to represent yourself? Because in Russia, for example, in some cases, you must have a lawyer and you simply cannot go to court without one.
Yeah, in the United States, you do not have to have an attorney, okay? So I want to be very clear about that. You do not have to have a lawyer. And in fact, maybe only one side has a lawyer. There are forms that are available online for people that want to try to do it on their own. I can tell you that those forms are sometimes not so easy to fill out. I have a divorce right now where my client tried to fill out all the forms himself, and he just, it got too complicated and he just sent everything to me to complete. But in that situation, him and his wife already reached an agreement on everything. So there is a way for people to navigate the system without an attorney. There are lawyers that work at help desks. There are forms available online, but a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people choose to hire an attorney to assist them.
Okay. Well, I was surprised by how many people, how cultural this thing is to sign a prenup before you actually get married. In Russia, that's definitely not a thing. People don't do this before marriage. I guess we have some cases to sign a prenup while the divorce or when the divorce is over, if it's even possible. But here I have a question not about the prenup agreement, but about custody. As far as I know, almost in 100% of the cases, the custody over children is awarded to the mother. How does it work in the United States? Because here it's very, very common. If there is a lawsuit and parents are fighting over custody, usually the custody goes to the mom. How does it work in the United States? Is it that common as well, or things could be done differently there? Thank you.
So when I first started practicing family law, that was also the rule, right? I mean, by and large, the woman got custody, or she had the primary residence with the child, unless the father could somehow prove that, the children were endangered in their care, right? Or there was some kind of substantial concern. But in the United States, there has been a trend more towards joint 50-50. I'm not going to go so far as to say that it is now the default, because at least in Illinois, judges are still looking at cases on a case-by-case individual basis. But by and large, unless there's a good reason why both parents shouldn't be in the children's life on an equal or almost equal basis, judges tend to lean more in that direction. The default in my county, in Champaign County, is actually, and I'm hesitant to use the words mother and father, but just for illustration purposes, let's just say the mother would have primary, then the father would have Friday night through Monday morning, and then one other night during the week. This is about a 60-40 split in time, okay? But if the father wants 50-50, then it's almost like the burden then shifts to the mother to then explain why that doesn't work. Like perhaps there's too far of a geographic distance between them or something along those lines. So I believe that we're going to continue to see things trend in this area where the default is going to be more towards 50-50 in the United States. So it's interesting about how Russia is more of a default with the mother.
Okay. Well, we have some questions in the chat, but one more time for the audience. There you go. We have a question from an actual attorney.
Hello, tell me please, is it matters to have a special education to represent people's interest in courts? Because in Russia, you have to have some education in order to represent people's in courts. In high education.
Yeah, so in the United States, you only need what's called a Juris Doctor, okay? So the Juris Doctor is basically a law degree, okay? And I, of course, have to be a bar licensed attorney. And that's all that you have to do in the United States to practice any area of the law. If I wanted to, I could go be a criminal lawyer with those same credentials. Now, that being said, there is a requirement under the law that lawyers be competent, okay? So what is competency? How do you get competency? I got competency by getting a good mentor and then learning things on my own. Okay. I've now practiced family law for about 12 years. And so even though I've had no formal education, I never took one single law school class on family law, I have learned a lot. Just yesterday, I was eating breakfast, and I took with me to breakfast about 4 different court cases where I would read them during breakfast on a myriad of family law issues. And so lawyers are able to self-teach themselves in the United States. So there's no special credential that's required. I do have a master's degree, but it's something totally unrelated. It has to do with beef cattle, okay? So it's not a requirement that I have be a therapist or have any special education in the area of family law.
I have a follow-up question. Is this true that the difference between attorney and the lawyer, that the attorney actually has taken and passed the bar exam and the lawyer does not necessarily did that thing?
You know, it's funny. I have always felt that those terms were synonymous, that they meant the same exact thing. So I don't think that there's actually a difference between lawyer and attorney. Okay, so I think in both instances it needs to be a person who has passed the bar exam. But don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. I do know that a person who decides to not take the bar exam or they didn't pass the bar exam, that we would call them a law school graduate, but we wouldn't call them an attorney or a lawyer because they're not licensed to practice law.
Okay, well, that's a good case for our students who are into languages to double check this matter. Okay, so now there are some questions from the audience online. Do you take into account your moral principles when you make a decision to work or not to work with the case?
Yeah, moral principles and also just my own comfort. I was just thinking about how one time in New York, I had somebody who, like the mafia, he had some story about the mafia, and I just was like, I don't want to even be anything close to this case right now. But also, if I feel that there's something that my client is doing that's morally wrong, right? Perhaps they are withholding the child from the other parent or something along those lines, then, I can decide not to represent them. Now, there have been some ugly cases that I have been a part of. For example, I've had divorces where maybe one parent is a prostitute, okay? And so these are ugly cases. But if I can take my personal viewpoints aside and be thinking about, okay, I'm here as a professional to help this person, despite their life choices, navigate the system and to help develop a plan that's in the best interest of their child, then I'm able to navigate that situation, even though I might have some moral problems with what's going on.
Okay, we also have a few questions about the most interesting or the most difficult cases that you remember. And if it's okay, could you share this with us? And I also have a question about what was the shortest marriage that you had to deal with?
All right, the most difficult case that I had to do with a hoarder. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have many hoarders in Russia, but and I have had multiple cases with hoarders, but one in particular was very bad. He had...
Can I please interrupt you here, because the audience might not know what hoarder and hoarding is. Can you please tell us more information?
So my client said that he was a collector, but that was an understatement because I went to his apartment, okay? And there was so much stuff in the apartment that you could barely walk through the room. Okay, there was furniture and stacks of magazines and barely a place to sit. Okay, and it became a fire hazard. What made things more complicated in that case was that the wife wanted my client, the husband, to leave the apartment, okay? But he was the one who was a hoarder, and he had all of the stuff. And this was a very special apartment because in New York City, it was rent controlled, which meant it was a very good deal. And the court ultimately held that he was the one that should leave because he was the one that was the hoarder and was causing it to be inhabitable. So the court basically had to monitor my client with moving all of his stuff. It took 4 days for him to move all of the stuff out of the apartment, and there was a court court attorney or court secretary that was basically there to help monitor things. The police had to be involved. It was a real mess. So that was probably one of the saddest and difficult cases that I have been a part of. One of the shortest marriages that I've had was 1 month, and in most states you can't even get divorced if you're unless you're married for at least 6 months. But in this particular state, this person lived in Illinois, and it was a Michigan divorce, and he was able to go ahead and go forward with the divorce. But they, only dated for a little while. They got married, and then 1 month later, they wanted a divorce. So that was the shortest. That was the record.
Okay, well, so since I'm in charge of the microphone, I was also wondering, hoarding, I thought that's a psychological disease. And I know that in Russia, people who have this kind of disorder, hoarding, for the audience, это компульсивное покупательство и захламление пространства. And in Russia, these people won't be even allowed to the courtroom because legally they cannot represent themselves. And in the United States, do they have the right to represent themselves? I mean, not themselves, but with the help of attorney. Because in Russia, I don't think that will be even possible. I know that in the United States, that's a very common thing, and it's not a thing, it's a problem, I mean. But I was surprised that he was actually allowed to be part of the lawsuit.
Well, to be very clear, he was never diagnosed with any mental disorder or diagnosed as a hoarder in any way. My client vehemently denies that term. He was against the court calling him a hoarder. He called himself a collector. And in New York, if you are a hoarder, to your point, because it is considered a psychological issue, a landlord would not be able to evict you. But because this was a divorce, and because the judge held that it was not healthy for the two of them to continue living together, the judge had to make a decision on who should leave. He decided that the wife and the child should stay in the apartment and the husband should leave. I disagreed with his reasoning, for some of the reasons that you just set forth, but nonetheless, I'm not the judge, and I had to help my client navigate that very, very tough situation in his life, as he had been living in that apartment for quite some time.
Okay, thank you. Some of the questions from the audience online. Hello, Cari. Could you tell us how often do you solve questions online? I think it's how often do you help people online?
With the pandemic, I've been doing more and more online video conferencing and using Zoom and GoToMeeting. So in the last few months, there's been a lot more of this with online assistance as opposed to before, whenever I had mostly in-person meetings. So I think that is one of the silver linings with all of this. I know just last week I had a telehealth appointment with my one of my doctors to review my cholesterol, and it was very helpful that I could just review that information with a doctor using video conference. So I hope that this trend will continue, not just with professionals like doctors, but also with lawyers, because I believe that it's been very beneficial to people seeking legal help.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Cari, do you watch TV series at all, or do you watch movies about lawyers? If so, do you have a habit of looking for how they misrepresent your field? And what TV series can you recommend?
You know, I quit watching lawyer series, but I know that during law school, I was addicted to the show called The Practice. And I know that they had a more of criminal law type cases that were there. I find that on television, how they portray lawyers is a little incorrect. I feel like on TV, lawyers are in the courtroom all the time, and that's just not the reality. A very small percentage of lawyers actually go to court, probably around 5 to 7%. And the lawyers like myself that go to court aren't in court every single day. I'm probably in court just a few times a week at most. And there are some weeks, like this week, I won't be in court at all. Now, but there's a lot of good things that those shows bring. And I like that it highlights some of the intellectual challenges that lawyers face. I like that it shows lawyers really helping people. On television, cases move a lot more quickly than what they actually do in real life. For example, divorces in real life might take a whole year to go through from the very beginning to go to trial. Whereas on a television show, you go through an entire case in 60 minutes. But in real life, that could be maybe a year or more of litigation.
Okay, thanks. And I think we have an incoming question from the audience, or no? No? Okay, guys, yes, there is one.
Yes, Cari, maybe I missed the information you told about that, but if the marriage is annulled, so the couple decided to annul their marriage, what will happen to kids? I didn't get. So who will have the custody over children? How do they decide it?
So if a marriage is annulled, okay, it's like the marriage never happened. Okay, so the kid stuff in that situation would be dealt with in exactly the same way in the fact that the two unmarried people that have children together, right? So you're still going to decide all the issues involving custody, or sometimes referred to as the allocation of parental responsibilities, parenting time, and child support, exactly the same way, but it just won't be in the context of a marriage.
Okay, thank you. One more question from our online audience. How often do you face bribery, and how often do you face pressure on court by any governmental authority?
So I've never faced bribery. I mean, I'm sure that it happens, but I have never been a part of that, nor have I known anybody who has been a part of any kind of government bribery. I think that the court system can apply pressure towards lawyers in different ways. Some judges will apply more pressure for settlement than other lawyers, but this can vary a little bit by from judge to judge, or even geographic region from geographic region. For example, culturally, judges in New York will push settlement more than judges in Illinois, or at least where I practice. And part of that is simply because in New York City, the court system can't handle this many cases all the time. There's so many people. And so the judges really like to try to encourage people to settle, so the system can handle the cases that really need the judge to make the determination.
Okay, thank you. Another interesting question about the prenup. So if there was a prenup, and as far as I understand, each prenup is different, but is there any rule of thumb that says that, okay, so the estate will be divided 50-50, or the prenup is every time completely different from each of the cases? Or is there a special rule which applies to all of the prenups?
So as a general rule, prenuptial agreements talk about a few different areas. One of the major areas that every single prenup will address is this issue of what is in the marital bucket versus what is in a separate property bucket. So if you can visualize in your head that everything in a marriage fits into one of three buckets, okay? Marital, spouse one, and spouse two, okay? Now, what the prenuptial agreement will do is it will identify exactly what is in the different buckets, okay? And some of these things could be exactly what the law is, and other things might deviate, okay? So an example might be with income. So under the law, any income that you earn is marital. Now, the prenup might say any income that you earn is going to be separate property, okay? Business income might be a separate thing. I have multiple businesses. I own a law practice, I own a farm, and if I was going to get married, I would want those things to be in my separate property bucket, okay? And so then the determination, the next step is how would you like to divide the marital bucket? And the default tends to be 50-50, but some people will come up with their own equation. So that's sort of big issue number one, is this concept of the three buckets and what's in the three buckets. Big concept number two is spousal support. And so perhaps the parties decide to leave this alone, perhaps there's a waiver, perhaps they decide to make their own rules. Big concept number three is estate planning. And so again, there might be some kind of a determination that there's going to be a waiver of estate rights, or perhaps they want to just leave this alone and default to the law. The fourth major area that prenuptial agreements discuss might be promises during the marriage, like life insurance. The fifth major area has to do with breakup procedures. Perhaps the couple decides that if they are living in a house that's owned by one of them in their own individual name, that if they break up, then the other person's going to leave, things like that. So those would be the five major areas that prenuptial agreements discuss.
Okay. We've got two questions about statistics on your cases. People is asking if it's okay, how many cases have you solved? How many of them were successful? And also, how many cases can you take at the same time?
Yeah, so I don't know how many divorces I've done. Okay, I have never counted, but a lot. I've done a lot. Right now, I probably have a little bit, somewhere between 100 and 120 cases right now. But you have to also remember that it's not just me. I also have 3 other lawyers that work for me. I have paralegals, I have secretaries, but by and large, I'm the one that's managing a lot of these cases behind the scenes. So that's sort of my current caseload right now. I keep track of the amount of people that have come and gone through my life. it's over 1,000 clients or potential clients that also include people that I've had consultations with. It's probably something around 1,200 people at this point in time. And I'm 12 years into my law practice.
Okay, thank you. We are going to turn the camera on to one of our online participants. Is he with us? Just a second. Yeah, he raised his hand. No, there is this option of raising your hand. He was the fastest one, so let's see if he has something to say. To ask.
Hi, Cari. I'm wondering if you can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. My question is, I'm wondering about preventive type of knowledge in your field. As you mentioned, lawyers are involved as something is not going well with the family, separation, divorces, and so forth. And when the vase is broken in thousands of pieces, it's hard to put them together. It's never going to be the same. And I'm wondering if United States are any programs which are educating youth or newlyweds, what is the family, how to treat each other, and how to keep it strong and for long and good time.
Yeah, those are good questions. And I think that, an ounce of prevention can go a long way. And I can tell you that there's no one major program. I know churches in the United States have, various programs, and I don't know how well that they are utilized. I can tell you that I'm a huge fan of therapy, but I can also tell you that a lot of people are, for reasons I don't understand, are adverse to wanting to go to therapy or even family therapy to help strengthen the family unit. So you bring up a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think that, not only in the United States, but throughout the world, there's more programs that are focused on, building those stronger family units.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question from the audience here.
Do you believe the judge decision is always fair, or sometimes you might disagree with it?
So the problem is that judges have to apply the law, okay? And in the United States, we are a common law country. There are other countries in the world, and I think that Russia is one of them, is a civil law country. So countries like England, Australia, the United States are common law, and most other countries throughout the world are civil law. So common law countries have to follow decisions of other judges, okay? Whereas in civil law countries, every judge has the ability to make his or her own decision based on the law, okay? So because in the United States, the judge has to follow the decision of other judges, they are bound by those decisions. And so I know sometimes judges can make challenging choices by applying the law in other cases. So they can't just decide what is fair. For example, there's a very specific analysis on how to decide, custody, for example. They have to apply the best interests of the child test, where there's probably 14 different factors or 12 different factors that the court considers. And there's court cases that discuss those various factors, and the judge is bound by those decisions of previous judges.
Okay, thank you, Karri. I know we're running out of time, but there is this one last question from the chat, and also it's how do you choose a lawyer? Could you give us advice on how to choose a lawyer to help you out?
So I think no matter what kind of lawyer that a person is seeking, they should definitely have a consultation with that lawyer. I am hesitant whenever people want to hire me without even having a consultation with me first, because, you know, I also want to make sure that it's a good fit for me too. So that person should visit with that lawyer, make sure that there's good chemistry. It's one thing for a lawyer to have a good knowledge base in that particular area, but it's another thing for that lawyer to have good chemistry with you. Perhaps they have different work styles. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. You know, I don't just love email. Okay, and if clients email me a bunch of questions, my response to them is, hey, let's get on the phone, let's have a video chat, let's talk about these things. I don't want to just go back and respond in an email to all of their questions. There are some lawyers that love email, that would respond back. They would much rather do that than have a call. And so, you know, depending on what it is that you are looking for in an attorney, make sure that that attorney has a good working style with you.
Okay. And well, one more question about from your practice. Did you get some useful information, especially how to avoid different legal procedures, like based on other people's experience? Can you tell us what to do or what not to do in order to, let's say, avoid the divorce?
Well, I can tell you that there's a specific kind of professional in the United States. And by the way, it's very, very rare, but it's called conciliation. Okay, so there are professionals that are actually trained in this area, and conciliation is short for reconciliation. So instead of mediating the divorce, these professionals are actually helping people mend their relationships. It's not exactly like couples counseling, but it's more focused on commonalities and mending things. So that would be one recommendation, because people come to my office sometimes, perhaps their spouse has filed for divorce and they're like, I don't want a divorce, I want to reconcile. Okay. The problem is that in most states, it only takes one person to want to get a divorce. But my recommendation to those people that don't want a divorce is to consider conciliation.
Okay. Well, Cari, thank you so much for helping people, for doing what you do, and for meeting us this morning. Can you show Cari the audience? Let's give a huge round of applause if you can hear. Just to remind, it was 6 a.m. at Cari's home, well, the place where she's giving the presentation from. And one more time, we are going to send your contact information to the participants of the conference. And if you guys will have any additional questions, I guess feel free to send Cari a message and ask for her legal advice. And thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And by the way, thank you to the U.S. Embassy for helping us organize and broadcast you here and be able to ask some questions and get perfect answers. Thank you so much, Cari.
Thank you.
One final question is, I hope this question is worth being interrupted. Okay, so what's the question is?
Hi, Cari. It was a very interesting lecture. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you guys too. And I have one last question. Cari, would you like to be in, would like to visit Russia sometime in future, maybe? And maybe you was in Russia already.
Yeah, I would love to come to Russia. In fact, I was planning on being in Russia in May, but this thing called the coronavirus happened, and so I was not able to come this year. So I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to come to Russia in 2021. I guess we will all wait and see what happens with this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Maybe in future you will be in Russia.
Yes, I would love that. I would love to meet you in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, nice to meet you. That's all. That was my question.
Thank you. Yeah, if there is to choose a destination, don't forget about Far Eastern region, the city of Khabarovsk. We are really looking forward meeting you here in person. And one more time, this is the best way to start your day and to end our day, because it's like 8 p.m. here and we'll be getting home. But that was really inspiring and motivating. Thank you so much. Yay!